Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Story Hour. I'm your host, Daniel Marcus. My unparalleled co-host is Laura Blackwell, and I hope that you're all healthy and safe and taking care of yourselves and people you care about in times that continue to be beyond strange. I started Story Hour over 2 years ago, and my intention at the time was just a place where me and my writer friends could get together and read our stuff to each other. So I envisioned a pretty small community, pretty cozy, and it has just grown wildly beyond that initial scope. And it's been really quite a journey. The idea is, as I like to say, it's one of the oldest forms of entertainment in human history, which is folks sitting around the fire telling each other lies. So every week we've got two authors, about 30 minutes each, doing exactly that. And tonight we are delighted to have Anya Martin, who is a returning visitor, and Caren Gussoff Sumption. It's our custom to ask authors to indicate a worthy cause for us to call your attention to. And if you're fortunate enough to be in a position to help financially, to do that if you're so inclined. So Anya is reading tonight for Planned Parenthood. It's plannedparenthood.org, who we need now more than ever. They provide a multitude of healthcare and educational services for men and women, including abortion services, abortion referral, contraception, HIV services, STD testing and treatment, pregnancy testing, and on and on and on. It is a truly essential organization. Caren is reading tonight for ERIAC, the European Roma Institute for Arts and Culture. ERIAC acts as an international creative hub to support the exchange of creative ideas across borders, cultural domains, and Romani identities. ERIAC aims to be the promoter of Romani contributions to European culture and talent, success and achievement, as well as to document the historical experience of Romani people in Europe. ERIAC exists to be a communicator and public educator, to disseminate a positive image and knowledge about Romani people for dialogue and building mutual respect and understanding. So we're going to start tonight with Caren Gussoff Sumption. Caren Gussoff Sumption is a sci-fi, horror, and literary fiction writer living in South Seattle. The author of 6 books and more than 100 short stories, Caren received her MFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and in 2008 was the Carl Brandon Society's Octavia E. Butler Scholar at Clarion West. Awesome. Her most recent novella, a deep space post-colonial comedy of manners called So Quick Bright Things Come to Confusion, will be out from Vernacular Books in September 2022. I personally can't wait for that. Find her online at spitkitten.com. So Caren Gussoff Sumption, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So tonight I'm going to read a story called Spring Forward. It originally appeared in Black Static, which is a UK magazine, in 2016. And it's a little bit of a stealth creeper story. So I thought it might be a nice one to start with, particularly when I learned I was going to be reading alongside Anya. So, Spring Forward. I finally talked Gomez into buying the setting, since he wouldn't take the stone. I pried back the soft gold prongs with my fingernail to loosen the diamond, and he crossed himself. He weighed the metal as I held the stone to the light. In the fluorescence, it looked beautiful, all faceted fire and spark. You sure it isn't real? I asked. It's real, Gomez winced and swallowed, like taking a pill dry. But it's made from a person. Then he crossed himself again. What are you talking about? I rolled the diamond between my fingers. Then it jumped from my hand. Gomez caught it before it hit the counter. He was quick. "Don't drop it like that," he said. "I didn't," I said. "It jumped." Gomez shook his head, gray hair on end. He handed the stone back to me quick. "You stole someone's loved one's ashes." I wrapped my hand around it this time so it wouldn't get away. He shoved bills at me for the gold. He wagged the paper till I took it. "Now get the hell out of my shop." I tried to come back a few times, but I'd crossed a line. I learned since then the stone was called a life gem. Chemically a diamond, yes, compressed from carbon ashes, human remains, sometimes cremated pets. Gomez knew it from the serial number engraved under a facet. It took balls for me to walk into the store today, even with my good intentions, amends to be made. I had a padded envelope and a roll of stamps and the jumpy stone. I wanted Gomez to witness. I was going to send the diamond back to the Life Gem Company for return to its owner. Said it right, no pun intended. But Gomez make amends. She nodded her head, unsurprised. "Come back in a few weeks," she said. So I went to the diner early, but my sponsor was already there. "How did it go?" I told him. He looked disappointed. "I was hoping you'd be done with amends soon." He made a check mark in the air. He was big on gestures, literal and figurative. "I will," I said. "I'll finish my other amends and then I'll go back." "You can't go backwards. You can only go forwards to the next step." My sponsor folded his hand. I shook off his wrist and rubbed my chin. The stubble was starting to itch. "You need to move forward," he smiled. "Spring forward, fall back." "I'm not sure how," I said. "Knock on doors in my old neighborhood?" My sponsor slapped his hand on the table like I'd said something inspired. "Yes, good idea." He's looked at the look on my face. "What else do you have to do?" Sobriety did free up a lot of time, but I did not want to do this. I went back to my sister Nanette's place in Yonkers. She made soup. I asked her about going door to door to find the ring's owner. Ridiculous, right? But my sister shrugged. "Why not? You have nothing to lose." Since I got sober, I relied on Nan as a baseline. I'd convinced myself of so many things for so long, I didn't trust my sense of reality. But this, it was absurd. That made me want to get high, which made me question whether it was indeed absurd. "I think it's absurd," I admitted. Nad dug into her soup. I followed suit. I ate a few bites, counting the beans in it. Nan made a big deal of it being a 15-bean soup, but I only counted 11 beans and said so. Nan pushed up her glasses. The bean mix actually counted large and small lima beans and whole and split peas as different. The lenses had a smudge from her finger, but I could still see her roll her eyes. "Now that's absurd." I hated knocking on doors. Catching people in their bathrobes, cluttered hallways behind them, weird food smells, voices, loud televisions. It was also intimate. I kept thinking of that one rickety apartment complex, in particular, not far from Gomez Loan and Imports, where I knew I'd spent some time. Even now, as I stood in front of it, it was as familiar to me as any place I'd ever lived. So that was probably where I got the ring. I went floor to floor. I knocked, tried to explain myself through doors. I stumbled through Spanish. I waved the diamond at one mostly deaf old guy who thought I might be Meals on Wheels. One young, stylish guy opened a door on the fourth floor and looked at me like I was a bag of garbage, offering him another bag of garbage. I used to be young and stylish. He shook his head and shut his door. Like everyone else, he didn't know anything. Then I came to 602. The door was decorated with daisy no-slip decals, faded down from dark green. I knew this door. I'd been here before. It was the place. I was sure, 602. Next thing I knew, I was running. Down the stairs, bare bulbs on each floor swung with the wind I made. I ran so hard. My knees wobbled, feet hitting each concrete stair with a punch. I didn't stop until I was in the lobby. Hands supporting my liquid knees, I looked at the mailboxes. Most of them were built up with years of names taped over one another, but not 602. In old style Dymo tape, typewriter font, the box was marked Sylvia Morrison. Sylvia Morrison. She wore the compressed ashes of her dead husband in a gold ring I'd sold for $40. Sylvia. I said the name in my head like I knew her. And then two things occurred to me. Firstly, I couldn't just go back up and plop the rock into Sylvia Morrison's hand with an apology. And secondly, I had to go to the bathroom immediately. The running sent my sister's 11 bean soup into motion. I broke into a sweat. Docs told me it could take a whole other year before my digestion worked properly again after so many opiates. I went to the closest and only place that made sense. Deshay's daughter didn't even seem surprised to see me. She read my face without a word, and she waved me into the back. When I was done, I had the diamond on the counter in front of her. I need a setting for this, I said. She squinted at it behind a loupe. You know what this is, right? I nodded. She closed her book and placed the diamond on top. She wasn't afraid of it. You want gold, silver? Is it for you? Not me. Then before I even knew I said it, I added, for my wife. I had no idea where that came from. Deshay's daughter didn't even sniff. What ring size? Whatever. And gold, I guess. She rifled through a box of scrap. The metals tinkled like little bells. How much you want to spend? I only had a credit card. Nan wouldn't allow me to carry cash. She could follow me by the charges on the bill. Doesn't matter, I said. Deshay's daughter held the diamond against a setting. It looked like tin foil. This one's white gold, she said, about a size 7. That's pretty average for a lady. So I nodded. She set the diamond in with tweezers and squeezed with her fingers. She handed it to me in a little velvet bag, which I appreciated. I didn't even ask or look at the total as I signed. When I walked out, it was 3 p.m. I found a bench in a tiny park and I sat down. I should go back to my sister's house now before rush hour. I hated rush hour. I hated taking up space, walled in by swollen ankles, briefcases, and the clacking of empty lunch containers. It made me embarrassed and lonely. I didn't belong there or anywhere. But instead of getting up, I felt the velvet bag in my pocket and I wanted to get high. I'd not have a craving for a few weeks. The power of it ripped me naked, down to the familiar panic that I had no pills and I needed pills. It was organized terror, scanning down a mental list of where and how I could get an oxy, codeine, morphine. I looked around at people walking through and around the little park, eddies of bodies, a creek of purpose and destination. I was alone, dressed only in want. I could limp into a clinic and perform, first refusing the script, then accepting it sheepishly. Or I could head back into Manhattan, find Manny or Joe or John Bullitt, and hope they'd sell me the good shit instead of punishing me for going straight. Or I could go to the station. I could jump on the tracks. If I didn't die, which at the moment was a fine option, then I'd wake up, painkillers pipe straight into me. The ring burned in my pocket, hotter, till it was unbearable, pushing my cravings aside for the pain. I pulled out the bag, shook the ring into my hand. It wasn't really hot. I held it up, twisted it between my fingers. In the light, the diamond flashed. It was almost too much to see, so I looked down, a group of pigeons at my feet. The sun also played across their iridescent necks, purple, green, beautiful. But they ignored me, pecking at invisible crumbs. A bigger one carried thin sticks up into the tree above. After a few errands between the tree and the ground, the big one took a break, pecked at the ground with the rest. He had a big round head and eyes like shiny candy. I called out to him. The others flapped, jumped back, but he kept on pecking, moving closer, even stomping on my shoe with one craggy pink foot. I realized I'd been holding on to the ring so tightly the new setting left little dents in my palm. I knocked hard. The doorbell didn't even feel connected to anything. I gave Sylvia some time to get to the door. Then I knocked again. No answer. No blaring television or voices or footsteps or food smells. I had to get inside. The ring was burning again, and it took all my strength to turn away. Sylvia wasn't home. Halfway down the hall, the stairway door opened and a little guy pushed through. The weight of his tool belt pulled down on his small pants, and he hiked them up with a surprising amount of authority. He stopped me not 2 steps from Sylvia's door. Hey, you've been knocking on doors? You selling something? No, I answered, visiting. He squared his shoulders to take up as much room as he could, blocking my way. Who? I jerked my thumb behind me. Sylvia Morrison. He changed his posture. Oh, he said, you're a relation? Yes. I hadn't meant to lie again. It was out before I knew it. She's my grandmother, he finished. I nodded. I let him lead. Nerves, cravings, pressure, lies. My stomach gurgled. Little man stuck out his hand. I'm the super, John. She's been in the hospital now, what, 4 days? 4 days, I repeated, returning the shake. You need me to let you in? You have keys? John asked. I reached in my pocket like the keys would have actually been there, and there was nothing but the ring. It was only warm now. I nodded and stood aside. John jiggled his key at the lock, pushed in Sylvia's door. It opened with a blast of furnace heat. A thought from nowhere. Sylvia always liked it warm. I shook it away. Old folks always liked it warm. Damn, John said. He barely had to stoop to reach underneath the radiator and turn the knob down. Then he stared at me, expecting something, like a tip. Thank you, I said. That broke his gaze. No problem, he said. Lock the bottom on your way out. He stepped out, then stuck his head in. And let me know if I can do anything. Your Gram's a real nice lady. And then I was alone. The layout was definitely familiar, more familiar than I expected. It wasn't just that I'd broken in. It's different to know a place than what you consider when you rob a place. It wasn't that there's only a few floor plans for modest New York apartment buildings. It's not that either. I knew this place. It was clean, though more shabby from scrubbing. The air was metallic, like from copper or blood or oxidized bleach, a heady smell combined with the furnace. In the bedroom, Sylvia's bed was unmade, the crocheted coverlet half on the floor. It was wrong, and I picked up the blanket to pull it across the front of the bed. Without thinking, I held it to my nose. Camphor and violets, an older person, a grandma. But also something else, something sweet and familiar. I startled, realizing I was squeezing the acrylic yarn so tight it squeaked, and that I was sporting half an erection. He's in the Zoom. Sorry, Kitty's behind me. I jumped away from the bed and into the dresser. A herd of glass and wooden and ceramic horses fell against one another with a tinkle like ring settings. Then a slam, a shatter, a pewter frame, amputating legs and tails. I righted it, crooked now on animal bits. It was a photo of Sylvia from years ago. The colors gone faded and sheer, lightened her black waves to acorn brown. You were a real cherry then, Syl, I said. I don't know where that came from or even what it meant. I was in bad shape. Followed the hallway to the bathroom with my hands. It was tiled with more photos, arranged somewhat chronologically from black and whites, a wedding, vacation, retirement. I didn't look carefully. I needed to use the can, but I stopped by the bathroom door at one of the last. An older couple on a boat, still docked, grinning, and an anniversary cake. Sylvia, her black hair, dark, obviously dyed. A man, blurred, as if in motion. Impossible. The couple was posed, still, for the shot. I traced back in time up the hall. Sylvia at 20, 30, 50. Her husband, the diamond in my pocket, burning again now, hot, hot, a chemical burning, always out of focus, imprecise, furry lines. I shook my head as if I was the lens out of focus, and for a second, just a second, with the burning on my leg, I saw him. I saw myself. I crashed into the spotless bathroom. A dead-eyed doll covered an extra roll of toilet paper. I looked. Hang on. A dead-eyed doll covered an extra roll of toilet paper. I looked in the mirror. Everything was as I left it. 35. Looking at it from the drugged blue eyes, shot through with red from panic and cravings, but the family blue, pale, damp, needing a shave. That doll watched me, and I watched it, waiting for it to come alive or spin its head. It didn't. We just watched one another until I calmed down. I looked at the carpet the whole way out and shut the front door tight, locked the bottom lock behind me. Back in Yonkers, Nan seemed mad at me. Should have just left it, she said, handing me a cup of leftover soup on her side table or something. No, I said. I couldn't explain why. I couldn't do it. It wasn't right. None of it was right. It didn't feel right, I said. Nothing feels right, Nan. Nothing ever feels right to you. Nan wasn't wrong, but she was twisting my words back at me and applying them in exceptional context. But she also kept an eyebrow raised the whole time she watched me eat, as if she was daring me to argue. I didn't argue. Nothing to say that wouldn't make her think I was using again. After Nan went to bed, I made calls. No Sylvia Morrison at Columbia Presbyterian. No Sylvia Morrison at Lincoln Memorial, Good Samaritan, or St. John's. I tried Mount Sinai last because I knew she was there, and I didn't want to know that I knew. She was, though, on 10 North, cardio intensive care. I also knew the 10th floor of Sinai well for good reason. I'd been to South, behavioral health for managed detox. I dialed my sponsor without thinking. Do you want me to go with you? My sponsor asked. Even though I was the one that called, it was a surprise he offered. I didn't want him to. I wasn't even sure why I called him. No, I said, I can do this tomorrow morning. We made plans for afterwards. An afternoon meeting a few blocks from Sinai. I'd get a 6-month chip and we'd talk in front of everyone. I'd tell them about returning the ring, making amends. They would clap, we'd have cookies and coffee, and I'd formally take the next step. My sponsor was proud. Don't forget to set your clocks ahead tonight, sponsor said. Remember, spring forward, fall back. Right, I said, spring forward. It was a beautiful morning. The world was alive with color and movement, birds and insects, insistent swards of green, punching through cracks in the sidewalk towards the sun. Even at Sinai, there was color and purpose. Doctors and nurses, fidgeting families, carts and wheelchairs. Diehard smokers, sweatpants under striped gowns and Velcro shoes over slipper socks, let out cumulus clouds of smoke that rose towards their portable IVs. I bought some overpriced daffodils at the gift shop so I wouldn't be completely empty-handed. They were so yellow they seemed fake. I couldn't really remember, though, the last time I really looked at a daffodil. Maybe they were always this yellow. They were yellow as the paper daffodils that decorated the 10th floor lobby, along with fabric butterflies and a bird's nest made of crepe paper to celebrate the season. It looked like a kindergarten classroom rather than a ward. I stood in front of the whiteboard at the nurse's station. I reread the list a few times, dumbly. Montenegro on 10A, Bernstein White 10 BC, Joseph's 10D, Weidel Wada Zena Harpence, Pantages Carol Villanova. An aide finally asked if she could help me. Sylvia Morrison, I said. I don't see her name. The aide scanned the list over my head, then ducked behind the station. She tapped some keys. Her eyes made little darting movements, tracking the information. Are you a relative, sir? Yes, I lied. It was beginning to feel true. Can you take a seat in the waiting room? I'll get a caseworker to come and sit with you and explain. The waiting room was empty. The seat I chose was warm. The caseworker ducked his head around the corner. His comb over waved like a flag, then plopped into place. I followed him into a little room I assumed was designed for these sorts of conversations. I'm so sorry, the caseworker said. The contact numbers for her family members, he glanced down, were wrong or disconnected. We only, I surprised myself saying, had each other. It made the caseworker understandably uncomfortable. You were close? I nodded, trying not to let any other word slip as the ring warmed. Your grandmother, he started. I let him assume I was her grandson, just like the super. I nodded again. Your grandmother passed away at approximately 3 a.m. She had an advance directive, do not resuscitate. We have copies of her arrangement. She had a pre-need contract with Funeral Alternatives for a cremation. He looked deeper in the folder. His hair quivered like it didn't like what it saw. I shifted in the chair. The ring was hot now, burning. The caseworker assumed I fidgeted from emotion. Have you ever dealt with this before? I shook my head. We can schedule transportation. You'll have to arrange with the crematory any subsequent memorial. He smiled an unhappy smile. Sounds like it was quick. There wasn't any pain. That seemed like a good thing, and I said so. That's good. The ring was hotter than it had ever been. I kicked my leg to reposition my pocket. He nodded. His hair seemed relieved at my response. He passed me the open folder and a pen. I managed to take it, though my leg was on fire. An orange arrow indicated where I should sign. I saw words on the paper, but I couldn't read them. The pain was blinding, deafening. I can provide referrals, the caseworker added, for outside assistance. But I didn't hear him. It sounded like we were underwater, and the only way I knew we weren't was that water would put out the fire on my legs. I dropped the folder and pen on the floor, and I clawed at my pocket. I could only think of the ring. I had to get it out. I was in agony, and the caseworker kept talking. Things were closing, dimming from the outside in. I was falling. Do you need assistance? The caseworker said. I'm fine. Take your time, he said. Nothing was sadder than an old man crying, oh, Syl, my Syl. I swallowed the tears that were starting. I'm as fit as possible. Take your time, the caseworker repeated. I shook my head. I signed my name. I passed it over to him. He glanced at it, ripped off the original. He laid his copy on the table, pushed it towards me. I took my copy, tucked it in the daffodil under one arm. I stood up, easy, quick. It was light, straight. I held out my other hand for the caseworker to shake. Thank you, young man, I said. My condolences. His eyebrows raised. Next to the door, the clock was an hour behind. I cocked my head at it. Spring forward, I said to the caseworker. Right, he answered, spring forward. And then I slowly took a step. Thank you so much. Sorry for my very wanton and expressive cat. He's not usually that emotive.
Oh, it's quite all right. We love our readers, our writers' pets. So thank you so much for a wonderful story. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Caren Gussoff Sumption, everybody. It's our custom to just pause for a moment between readers, just to let the previous work resonate and ring just a little bit. So I'm going to take a deep breath, count to 3 or 5 or something, and then we'll resume the program. So. All right, onward. Anya Martin first joined us in December 2020, so she's what we like to call around here a repeat offender. Anya Martin was weaned on Friday Night Frights, has always rooted for the monster, and regrets abandoning her earliest career aspiration, which was paleontology. So was mine, and I regret it too. Her debut collection, Sleeping with the Monster, was published by Leith Press in 2018. Her novella Grass was a 2016 Dim Shores limited edition chapbook and republished in Spanish and Czech. Her most recent story, The Other Cat, will also appear in Dim Shores Looming Low 2 anthology. Her fictions appeared in many anthologies and journals, including Casilda's Song, Cootie's Shot Required, Looming Low, Eternal Frankenstein, Giallo Fantastique, Tales from a Talking Board, Cthulhu Thagen, and more. She co-hosts and co-produces the Outer Dark podcast and symposium with Scott Nicolay. She is the founder and blogger-in-chief of ATLretro.com. Her steady gigs as a freelance journalist have included the Wall Street Journal, Market Watch, the Marvel Entertainment Group, that is quite a range, and many more. You can keep up with her publishing news at www.anyamartin.com and follow her on Twitter at Anya99. Anya, take it away.
Hi, thanks for having me back. It's a lot of fun. So I tried to think what I should read today. I started counting my word counts, and they were all like 4,000 words and up. So it was a little challenging, or really gory, or kind of sexy. So that's Window and Sleeper the Monster. But any case, then I remembered that I had done something a little different, which I hope will be kind of fun for everybody. It's a story called Trollspotting, and I was commissioned to do this by the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival by Gwen Callahan in response to a contest that they did back in 2016, where one lucky fan got placed into a story. So the winner was a gentleman named Matthias, and from Sweden, who lives in Portland. And I wrote a story based that was inspired by his favorite author, Arthur Machen, and has elements that he told me. And somehow I put it together, and I feel like it turned out better than it sort of just worked its way out and became something. And it was in a little newspaper they give out as their program book. And otherwise, it hasn't been seen or published anywhere. So I'm going to guess that most people listening probably didn't read this story, haven't seen it, and it's a little different than maybe what they know me for. And maybe there's a little bit of, I don't know, there's some Arthur Machen in there, but there's also some tiki culture and some Portland, Oregon, and some pugs, and perhaps a troll. Anyway, let's start. Matthias was walking goblin and ghoul along the Willamette River on the East Flank Esplanade when he felt something sharp and hard hit the top of his head. He flinched and grasped a hand up to cushion the pain. The small object bounced off his skull and onto the ground, where Ghoul, the feistier of the two pugs, lunged at it. Goblin grunted in mild disapproval, still wincing from the odd impact, though Matthias dug a couple of small treats from his pocket and deposited them on the ground next to the dogs. Ghoul hesitated for a moment and then spat the thing out in preference for actual food. Matthias now saw that the projectile wasn't an acorn or a stick, but a bone. A vertebra, to be precise, about 10 millimeters wide. At first glance, he guessed it was from a bird. He'd recently developed a fascination with bird watching. Just then, he smelled the foul scent of a fresh fart and heard a twitter of laughter from above, which startled the little dogs into a frenzy of barking. He looked up. Seated on a branch about 6 feet up was a little man with a long bulbous nose, pointy ears, big eyes, rumpled straw-like hair, and black wings. Matthias felt a sudden sharp pain to his temple, and a shadow formed in front of his eyes, which he immediately snapped shut. A strange wave of unease flashed through his brain as the dogs barked louder, and then the discomfort ceased as suddenly as it had begun. When he opened his eyes, the little guy had vanished, and Goblin and Ghoul lay sprawled on the pavement, panting, as pugs are wont to do. Even though Matthias had lived in Portland for the last 20 years, he knew exactly what had happened. He was Swedish, after all. He'd just seen a troll. It wasn't really that unlikely. Portland was full of bridges. Its nickname was even Bridge City, and trolls lived under bridges. He'd passed several while walking his dogs, and he'd even heard that there were dozens of plastic troll dolls nailed to the struts of a railroad bridge on the edge of the city. Hipster humor, he supposed. Matthias shrugged, picked up the vertebra, put it in his pocket. Goblin and Ghoul looked up expectantly and sat. He pulled out a couple more treats, which they devoured eagerly, along with a salt licorice stick for himself. Everybody sated on their favorite snacks. They continued on their promenade. "Good morning, Matthias." Art Machen greeted him jovially. The two bugs by now were so mellowed after a mile of walking that they lay down and immediately fell asleep by the shop door. The Tiki Tumbler on Hawthorne Boulevard, which dealt mostly in Polynesian-themed vintage ephemera, was trying hard to hold on despite rising rents due to gentrification and now being sandwiched between an organic French bakery and one of 3 new pot shops. Art depended on regular customers like Matthias, who spent much of his disposable income there. Ever since he and his wife Melissa spent their honeymoon in Hawaii, Matthias had been obsessed with collecting Hawaiian shirts, and their yellow 1906 Craftsman bungalow was filled with all manner of mugs and exotic cocktailware and furnishings. Matthias was especially proud of his annual luau's, which had become legendary among the denizens of the vibrant Portland tiki subculture. He made a killer Mai Tai as bartender, but he himself abstained completely from alcohol. Indeed, the hour was scarcely 10, but Art, the very epitome of a sideburns rockabilly blonde surfer in his bright orange Hawaiian shirt covered with moai, already had a tiki mug clutched in his hand. "What's up? I think you had a serious hangover, dude, if I didn't know you didn't drink. Or the sky fell on your face." "No, a vertebra fell on my head, and then I saw a troll in this tree," Matthias said, as if both were completely natural things to happen on a morning stroll. He glanced over at a bamboo-framed mirror on the wall and saw deep, dark circles under his eyes that he didn't recall being there when he woke up. He hoped they'd fade away because he didn't want Melissa to worry. "What kind of vertebra?" Art inquired. "Some species of bird, I think," Matthias said, handing the bone to him. Art pulled a magnifying glass out of a drawer under the cash register and examined it. "You're really unlucky, you know," Art said, handing it back. "Unlucky?" Matthias explained, confused by Art's odd comment. "All I know is that everyone who sees a Portland troll is never quite the same again," Art said. "So what? We see trolls all the time in Sweden," Matthias said. Not that he ever had seen an actual troll in Sweden, other than in a gift shop or in the illustrations of a book. "Well, I don't want you to worry, but everyone I ever heard of who saw a Portland troll disappeared soon after," Art said, taking a quick chug of grog. "You might stay away from bridges from now on, man." "Uh-huh," Matthias said. He assumed Art was joking as per usual, though he also felt like he couldn't be sure. He still didn't fully understand American humor and was embarrassed to admit that. Anyway, if the worst a troll could do was drop a bone on his head, that wasn't very much to worry about. If he even had seen a troll, he thought of the strange sensations in his head and eyes, probably just a migraine aggravated by the dog's barking at a squirrel or a raccoon. "So what have you got for me today, Art?" he asked, changing the subject. Art put down his drink, shuffled a bit under the counter, and pulled out a thick tome of at least 100 pages with a crouching eagle on the cover, a nearly mint hardcover copy of Birds of America, edited by Gilbert T. Pearson, the Bible of American bird watching. Matthias gasped audibly. "Yes, it's the 1936 first edition," Art said, placing it into Matthias's now twitching hands. "It might help you figure out what bird has that vertebra." "How much?" Matthias asked. "On ABE books, the cheapest in this condition with dust jacket is $100. But since you're such a good customer, how about 75? "I'll take it," Matthias said. "But can you wrap it so it won't get damaged in my backpack?" "Certainly," Art said. As he reached to take it back, Matthias's hands were shaking so much with excitement that he almost dropped the book. In the clumsy exchange, a loose piece of paper fluttered out and onto the floor. When Matthias bent down to pick it up, he saw it was a sketch of a bird's skeleton. It looked precisely and anatomically accurate, except for it was missing one vertebra. Below it, the artist had written, "Crow, injured by troll." Matthias felt the throbbing again in his temples, and darkness flashed across his eyes, followed by that queasy feeling in his stomach, as if he were about to faint. By the time Matthias got home, it was nearly 5. Art had dialed 911 and called Melissa, And even though he had awoke from the faint before the paramedics arrived, she insisted that he go to the emergency room for a full examination. The doctors had no explanation. While he'd been a sickly child, Matthias had no other known current health issues, so they settled on a particularly pervasive migraine. He told them about the vertebra falling on his head, but they insisted it was too small and lightweight to cause any trauma. Melissa fixed him meatloaf, his favorite dish. Once they'd eaten, she headed out to make a grocery run and to pick up the dogs from Art, who had agreed to watch them during the day's medical misadventures. She left Matthias out on the lime green patio. Usually he spent the evening pacing the garden, checking and refilling his 10 bird feeders and 3 baths. Tonight, though, she made him promise to just sit back in a lawn chair and limit any bird watching to his new book. Matthias flipped the pages slowly, past meticulous color illustrations of every North American bird he'd ever heard of, from unusual varieties of ducks to egrets to jays to robins to vultures and condors, even to many he hadn't heard of, accompanied by maps of habitats, detailed descriptions of their habits, and diagrams about how to identify species by the appearance of their eggs. Matthias was so entranced by examining each page that he soon forgot about everything that transpired prior in the day. But when he neared the end, he discovered something frustrating. A bunch of pages had stuck together. But how had he not noticed that in the shop? True, the dust jacket was virtually like new, despite the book being 80 years old. But this damage would have merited a bigger price cut. The problem began right after the tricolored heron, or the Egretta tricolor, a blue, purple, and white feathered avian, which had been spotted from Florida to Connecticut. Matthias picked at the pages, gently tried to separate them. After about 5 minutes of effort, he heard a trill and saw a spotted towhee, a black and red member of the sparrow family, approximately 7 inches from beak to tail, perched on one of the feeders on the edge of the bamboo fence at the far end of the yard. Still holding the book, he abandoned the chair and crept slowly in the direction of the bird. It lifted its red eye in his direction momentarily as he drew nearer. What a treat, Matthias thought. But just at that very moment, a crow swooped down from above. The towhee let out a shrill scream as the crow knocked it to the ground and stuck its own head into the feeder instead. Matthias was so startled by the sudden atrocity that he dropped the book. Another crow cawed, perhaps from the next yard, and suddenly the garden contained a murder of them, cawing loudly and angrily, descending on all the feeders. They ate fast and voraciously, and with such furious clatter and chatter that Matthias slammed his hands over his ears to shut out their horrible, horrible clatter. The towhee had gotten back onto its feet, but was dragging a leg. Matthias glanced around the ground for sticks or a pine cone to throw at the crows. If he could get them to abandon his yard, maybe he could help the poor injured creature. Being summer, the grass was fairly clear of tree debris, so instead he grabbed a rock from the circle around Melissa's small herb garden. He hated to injure any living creature, but he hurled it at the first crow, which had knocked away the towhee. His aim was poor, and he smashed the glass on the feeder, but the crow leapt back and into the air. All the crows cawed suddenly in distress and took to the air, abandoning the garden as rapidly as they had descended upon it. The twilight had faded almost to black, and stars were beginning to peek through. It hit Matthias that he'd never remembered the yard being this quiet. The towhee was gone too. Maybe its injury wasn't really that severe after all. At this moment, he remembered the book. As he picked it up, worried his treasure had been damaged further, he saw that the pages were no longer stuck together. When he reached the patio, he lit a citronella candle on the table so he could read the remaining portion. The next bird in the book was a troll with black wings, and the art resembled exactly the creature he'd seen above him in the tree earlier today. Matthias heard laughter behind him that resembled both a twitter and a gruff guffaw, as unlikely as it was that these sounds could be merged into one. Flying towards him with black wings was a familiar figure with a bulbous nose. Matthias felt a sharp pain in his forehead, and all light vanished from his eyes. When Melissa returned, she let the dogs out into the yard. She called for her husband, and Ghoul returned with a single human vertebra in her teeth. No other trace of Matthias was ever found. So that's
What an awesome pair of stories.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't, our authors do not talk to each other generally. Well, sometimes they do, but they typically don't coordinate beforehand. They don't coordinate with us. But pretty much every week, there's some ways that the stories just kind of like resonate with each other, really work together well. So I want to thank both of our authors tonight, Caren Gussoff Sumption and Anya Martin, for a couple of great stories and another really wonderful story hour. And thanks all of you out there for coming back every week and spending some time with us. Thanks to my fabulous co-host, Laura Blackwell, also coming back every week. And next week, I hope you all join us because we have Marissa Lingen and Michael Conley. So we're very excited about that program as well. And with that, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. And we'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.